Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back when you use it to buy the new Apple Vision Pro or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.50% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Apple Card and Savings by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
Hey there, Hang Up listeners. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about a story coming up a little later. It's from one of our partners, SAP. AI comes at you fast. If you don't get reliable and relevant advice, your business might miss out. Whether you're looking to automate tasks or embed AI in your business processes, SAP can help. To learn more, head to sap.com/AI and stick around for expert advice on how to embrace AI with confidence.
The following podcast includes explicit language, including, well, you'll just have to wait and see.
Hi, I'm Josh Levin, and this is Hang Up and Listen for the week of February 12th, 2024. On this week's show, we'll talk about how the Chiefs beat the 49ers in Super Bowl 58. It was a really good game, or at least a very exciting one, so we might go on for a bit. We're also going to bring on CNBC's Alex Sherman to explain the mega streaming service that may or may not change how we watch sports forever. I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm the author of the book The Queen. And in retrospect, maybe it wasn't such a great idea to agree to dye my hair red and yellow if Patrick Mahomes won. Also in Washington, D.C. is Stefan Fatsis. He's the author of the books Word Freak, A Few Seconds of Panic, and Wild and Outside. And he was so pumped up about Jake Moody's Super Bowl record-setting 55-yard field goal that he blacked out and missed Harrison Butker's record-setting 57-yard field goal.
You know, I've long contemplated getting a San Francisco 49ers helmet logo tattoo because, you know, the initials match up.
A bit of a non sequitur. Forgive me if I've made this joke before, but have you ever also considered wearing a Rob Lowe style hat and going to a game and having the hat just say Kickers?
Oh, I would love a hat like that. If someone wants to send me one, I would wear it all the time.
And with us, as always, from Palo Alto, three-time Slow Burn host, Joel Anderson, which is really the podcasting equivalent of winning 3 Super Bowl MVPs. Congratulations.
Yeah, me and Pat Mahomes, we've done it 3 times. That's what the Texas boys do, you know?
Similar hairstyle, you know.
I guess so. I didn't even think about that. I think my dad has a few things in common with Pat Mahomes Sr. Although to my knowledge, he's never gotten picked up the week before I had a big event or anything like that.
Or pitched in Major League Baseball.
That too.
All right, we want to thank our Slate Plus members for making this show possible. And this week, as we do every week, we have a bonus segment for you. We're going to keep up our Super Bowl talk. And in the bonus segment, we are going to focus on the broadcast, the CBS production, and everyone's favorite, well, not everyone, some people's least favorite color announcer, Tony Romo. If you want to hear us talk about that stuff and you want to hear bonus segments on other Slate shows, you also get ad-free listening for all Slate podcasts, and you can support us. You need to be a Slate Plus member. To sign up, go to slate.com/hangupplus. That's slate.com/hangupplus. On Sunday in Las Vegas, the Kansas City Chiefs were down by 3 in overtime, but they did have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. Here's Kevin Harlan on the call for Westwood One Radio.
In the shotgun, Mahomes. 4-man front, receiver in motion, low snap. He runs and he throws, caught, touchdown. It's caught. Hardman caught the ball. The Chiefs have won. The Chiefs have won.
A little bit of a Havlicek stole the ball cadence there. To make sure we cover the full spectrum of the human experience, here are Greg Papa and Tim Ryan on the 49ers radio call.
Another heartbreaking loss for Kyle Shanahan.
Dang
it! Not really the Havlicek stole the ball cadence, but again, full spectrum of human existence. Joel, I want to know what you were thinking and feeling in the moment the Chiefs won their 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years. But first, let's hear from Kansas City's Mecole Hardman, who caught the winning pass.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie, man. I caught that pass and I blacked out. Hey, oh, man. I didn't know what was going on until I seen Pat run into me. I'm like, oh, we just won. Okay, yeah, let's celebrate, you know?
So I'm trying not to be a prisoner of the moment, because last night I called this maybe the best game that I've ever seen with competitive stakes like this. And I've got so many thoughts, and I want to try to keep them short. But here's two of them. One, I think anybody that has ever played a team sport at the high school level or beyond can relate to what I'm about to say. You go into weight rooms, you go to tracks, pools, trails, whatever, and there's nothing out there but you and your will. And then your coach comes, and even if they're just like the dumbest guy that you've ever met in your life, they're saying these things to you. You know, pain is nothing but weakness leaving the body. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. You know, I don't care how rocky the sea is, just row the damn boat in. You know, that kind of stuff, right? And it all seems like cliche. It all seems kind of like ridiculous, right? But then I looked at that game, and I just saw how gassed those dudes were. And like, they are leaving everything on the field, man. Like, people are like hands on their knees. You can see the wave of fatigue all over the field. Everybody is at their, down to like their last gasp. And you understand why all these guys are telling you to work that hard. And like what it is like when you push your body to the edge, because you need it in a moment like that. And so I just thought that game was like the height of elite competitiveness, that everybody gave everything. I don't think anybody could ask for anything more than what we got in that game last night, right? Like, just, I was floored at the effort that both of those teams gave. And it just reminded me, my first 2-a-day workout at TCU. I spent all summer working out in high school, and I thought I was in shape. And then my first day at 2-a-days, I almost passed out at the end of the workout. And I was just like, I've never felt anything like this before. And then like, I was like, oh, sometimes coaches can go a little, go beyond with that sort of stuff, but you understand where they're trying to get you to for moments like that. And then the other thing I thought about, this is about Pat Mahomes in a way. I think about the success the 49ers have had over the years, like especially on defense, like Nick Bosa, Chase Young, Fred Warner, they've all have garnered all these accolades. They've had all these accomplishments. They've had so much success in the NFL. They've played about as good defense as you could possibly play in the NFL. And last night against Mahomes, they pushed each other to the limit. But then I thought of something to just kind of shift to another sport for a second. It reminds me of something Charles Barkley said about the 93 finals when the Suns played the Bulls. And he's just like, I think I'm the MVP. I'm the best player in the league, And he goes out there the first 2 games, and like MJ drops like 40, like in the first couple games. And he goes home and he's just like, oh, that guy's actually the best player in the world. I don't know if the 49ers felt that way, but watching it, I was like, oh, we are watching a great, an all-time generational great at work. And as good as the 49ers were, as accomplished as they were, as good as they had even been all night, it really didn't matter, because they had Tiger, they had Jordan, they had Sugar Ray Leonard versus Hearns last night. The Chiefs did. Like, you can hold Pat Mahomes for about as long as you can, but at some point he's going to get his. And I think that's what happened last night, Stefan.
Yeah, and I think we felt it all when San Francisco didn't score on the first drive of overtime. That felt like just a back-breaking moment. Not a failure exactly. Football is complicated. Sports are complicated. I mean, I think this entire game, it would be hard to rationally say someone was bad. There were mistakes, because mistakes are always made in sports games, but nobody was bad here. The first half was kind of lackluster. Neither offense had much to offer. The second half was marvelous, and the overtime was marvelous. I mean, these were great athletes playing at their peak. And honestly, Joel, I think what you said is right. I mean, watching that overtime really was sort of, they shoot horses, don't they? You just felt like someone's not going to make it here because they're so tired. It was the 7th longest game in NFL history. It was the first overtime game in a Super Bowl under the NFL's new rules that allow both teams to get the ball, to correct that clearly flawed rule that allowed the team that scored first to win the game, which was a correction to what happened a couple of years ago when Kansas City beat Buffalo in the playoffs in overtime. This was just really fun to watch. I mean, yeah, there were mistakes, obviously, but even the mistakes were just sort of routine football mistakes. This shit happens. Jake Moody missing that extra point was critical. It was a bad kick. Came off of like his ankle bone instead of his instep. There was that weird punt that gave Kansas City great field position and led to a touchdown. Fluke, ball hits a defender as he's running down the field, and Kansas City recovers on the punt. Even the mistakes in this game were sort of like interesting football mistakes and not terrible human fuck-ups. This was just a great game, Josh, and it confirms a lot of our pre-existing feelings, particularly about Pat Mahomes, but also about, the way that the best players of all time find ways to rise to the occasion and get it done when they have to.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Brock Purdy playing an absolutely horrible game was in play here. I think a lot of people did, and perhaps a lot of people were rooting for that, but he did not have a terrible game. And Bill Barnwell pointed out that when he got rid of the ball quickly, throws within 3 seconds or less, 17 of 22 for 189 yards. When he was pressured, held the ball, anything after 3 seconds, he was 6 of 16 for 66 yards. And so
and every quarterback's numbers are going to decline when they are pressured.
Well,
and
when Mahomes was blitzed towards the end of the game, when the 49ers pass rush slowed down, he was 5 for 5. Not every quarterback is...
Except for Pat Mahomes is what I was going to add.
Except for Pat Mahomes. So I think what we saw here is that, the 49ers and Purdy is dinged a little bit because he has so many great players around him. He has such a great scheme around him. And I think the 49ers, with their great skill position players, with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays, they have been able to elevate Purdy. Purdy can elevate himself at certain times. He made a lot of great throws in that game. But I thought the play of the game was the 3rd and 5, 2 minutes to go, regulation. The Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo send 6 people, like not quite an all-out blitz, but pretty close to it. And Purdy just like dumps it right into the blitz. Like whether that was a blocking scheme thing, whether he should have changed the protection, whether George Kittle should have slid over and blocked the free rusher, whatever it was, the scheming, the skill position players, Purdy himself, in that one moment, and I'm going to sound like Tony Romo here, that could have been for the Super Bowl. Like if they had completed that 1 3rd and 5 pass, they could have run down the clock and we could have had a game-winning field goal. It wouldn't have been as much of a classic ending. So thank you to, the Chiefs and to Purdy for the incompletion there. But you just have a feeling, Joel, that whether it's Mahomes, Andy Reid, there were similar plays, the 4th and 1 in overtime with the unexpected zone read where Mahomes kept the ball. There were these moments where the Chiefs could have lost the game, and they didn't because of the quarterback, because of the play caller. And it just felt like the 49ers may have had the better roster, but it just didn't feel like they quite had enough in this game to overcome everything that you need to overcome to beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think people have been saying that Mahomes felt inevitable. In a lot of ways, I think that's true when you normally are watching him. But actually last night, I kept saying, okay, it's almost over. Like the 49ers are about to pull it out. Whether, late in the game when they have a chance to salt it away and you think they're going to run the clock out. Or, just the sheer weird circumstances of missing an extra point, instead of getting it blocked. If just that, if you just don't get a hand on that, game is over, right? The 49ers likely win in regulation. So there were so many, the play where Marquez Valdez-Scantling on the 1st and 10 catches the ball, 6 yards.
Minus 10 yards after catch.
Yeah, it ends up with a 4-yard loss. All this shit keeps happening. You're just like, oh, okay, it's fine. I don't know if Mahomes is going to be able to get out of that one. And here we go, right? And so, that's a testament to his greatness. But it's also just a testament to how weird and how sometimes unlucky football can be. I saw a stat that said that the Chiefs have, in the last 2 games against the 49ers, they fumbled the ball 8 times and recovered 7 of them. Right.
And that's just total luck.
That's just luck. That's just not that you can't practice that. That's the kind of shit that just happens. And so I think there was a point in the game in which I thought, okay, the 49ers are the better team here. And it was down the stretch. If you look from the point when San Francisco went ahead after they were trailing 13-10, and then they scored a touchdown. And then they went 12 plays and 75 yards, 7 plays and 40 yards. And then after overtime, they go 13 plays for 66 yards. And it just looked like they were finally imposing their will. They were being the physical, more talented team that they had been, and seemingly had been all year, most of the night. But then, shit happens. And sometimes, you got Jordan on the other sideline, and it doesn't matter. So to me, last night, Stefan, was less a testament to like the greatness of Mahomes, the mistakes that happened, 49ers falling short again, and just a testament to how weird and crazy and wonderful football can just sometimes be, right? When two great teams are out there, and sometimes they're both making mistakes and fucking things up, but also like they're making incredible plays, and they're playing this chess match out there with each other. You can kind of see it unfolding, right? And I just think that like if you were a football fan and you didn't have a rooting interest in it, I don't know how you couldn't have just loved last night, because there was never a point at which anything felt predictable.
Right. And even some of the decision making that I think in previous weeks or in a regular season might come under scrutiny, whether to go for it on, 4th and inches from your own 11, which Andy Reid faced, and the numbers say go for it, or Kyle Shanahan eschewing a field goal that would have tied the game at 13 on 4th and 3, a short field goal, and going for it and converting and scoring a touchdown.
I'm sure you were enraged
that.
like you were when Dan Campbell did the same thing. That he had
different
gone for
situation. I knew you were going to say that.
Different
situation.
Well, I'm looking forward to your very well prepared explanation, since you knew I was going to say it.
They were losing. But ultimately, Joel, you need to also, you said maybe not so much Mahomes, but maybe a lot Mahomes. I mean, in the 2020 Super Bowl, the Chiefs trailed 20-10 at the end of the third quarter. In the 2023 Super Bowl, they trailed 27-21 after the third quarter. In Sunday's Super Bowl, they trailed 10-3 at the half. This was the worst, in air quotes, team that Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes have had in their 6 years together. The receiving core was pretty bad during the regular season. Most drops in the NFL. This was the team that faced the hardest playoff path ever, according to the analytical tool DVOA. The Bills and the Ravens just as easily could have made the Super Bowl this year, and nobody would have blinked. Said, great team, great games, Godspeed. And yet at the end, we're talking about Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Up next, we'll talk about 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan, whether he should be ashamed of his decision-making.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back when you use it to buy the new Apple Vision Pro or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.50% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Apple Card and Savings by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
This podcast is brought to you by Slate Studios and SAP. AI is moving so fast. If you don't get reliable and relevant advice, your business might miss out. Welcome to Dear Artie, an advice column from SAP, where we tackle the tricky questions at the intersection of AI and business. Let's meet our expert.
Hi, I'm Ian Khan. I'm a technology futurist, speaker, and author, and I love to help organizations measure their current state of readiness for an AI-driven world. I'm excited to dive into today's question.
Dear Artie, our finance team is top-notch, but small. How can AI support them? Signed, Financially Drained.
Well, financially drained, a lot is happening in finance and AI, and the possibilities are endless. First of all, AI can help your finance team analyze massive amounts of financial data faster than any human or a team of people could do. Second, it can help perform functions on data through algorithms. This can connect different systems together and really simplify decision-making for your finance team. And last but not least, AI can help reduce the time needed for data to provide insights so that your leaders can make faster decisions.
Embrace AI with confidence. Head to sap.com/AI to learn more.
All right, Joel, let's talk about Kyle Shanahan. Not a great Super Bowl resume for this man. He was the Falcons offensive coordinator when they blew the 28-3 lead to the Patriots, has now lost 2 Super Bowls to the Chiefs as the 49ers head coach, both with double-digit leads. What do you think of the game he called and how we should think about this guy who has been hailed as a genius, who's seen as somebody that other teams are like trying to get guys off his coaching tree? Like the league seems to want, a Kyle Shanahan in every pot, as it were. But, what does this do to his reputation, or what do you think it should do to his reputation?
I don't think it should do anything. What we're talking about here is Kyle Shanahan coming up short in Super Bowls, not week 13 of the regular season, right? And it's not like he's gotten blown out in any of these games. It's not like his team has shown up and not performed well. They've done all those things. At times, when you play against another great team, which you're going to if you make it to the Super Bowl for the most part, these things are going to happen. And I think that what's also kind of ridiculous about this is you can look right on the other sideline and see sort of the folly of trying to malign a guy for doing this well, getting this far, and coming up short. Andy Reid was Kyle Shanahan. I just saw the stat last night where it said Andy Reid, he won all 3 of his Super Bowls after he turned 60 years old, right? So
it's more than that, Joel. It's that Andy Reid was maligned. He was mocked. His clock management, losing big games, not being able to take his team to the podium.
Right. And do you know what changed? So he had Donovan McNabb as his quarterback. And Donovan McNabb, Pro Bowler, probably not going to make the Hall of Fame. But, he was a very good quarterback. But what happened? He got Pat Mahomes, and that changed everything. And I'm not blaming this loss on Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy did about as well as you could expect under these circumstances against a defense that, again, I think people consistently underrated all year long. The Ravens were the best defense in the league, and they're historically great. The Chiefs were just like a tick right behind them. Purdy had some success last night, but I think the thing is that the decision-making that Kyle Shanahan is making, and I don't, want to read too much into that, and he would never say this, sometimes you're conservative in some spots or sometimes you make a call in this spot because, I don't trust my quarterback to, make this play, right? Or I don't trust that he can drive the ball down the field or whatever. And again, sometimes you don't know what they're looking at. And the other thing that Kyle Shanahan's getting criticized for is, they didn't run the ball enough. They needed Christian McCaffrey. Well, shit. This is another good defense out there. We don't know what the looks are. None of us have the all 22 to know what Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy were seeing out there. So, long story short, I just think that, we can nitpick Kyle Shanahan here and all this other stuff. But if you have a coach and the biggest thing that you can say about him is that, he's made a few poor coaching decisions in the Super Bowl, then what are we talking about here? This guy's not Joe Bugle. You know what I mean? He's not even Robert Saleh. You know what I mean? He's clearly an elite coach.
Joe Bugle catching a stray on Hang Up and Listen.
Yeah.
Shanahan, Stefan, had to make a decision that no coach in the history of the National Football League could ever had to make, which is under these new overtime rules. There's some really fascinating game theory here. Both teams do have the chance to get the ball, but in that circumstance, do you want to receive the ball first or do you want to play defense first?
Yeah, and he chose to take the ball and play offense first. And it's complicated. And I didn't know what the analytics were going into the overtime. And it turns out that they're kind of could go either way.
It's a really, really well-crafted system, actually, it turns out. It's basically break even no matter what you do.
Yeah, but it is a fascinating exercise in decision-making. You take the ball first, you control the beginning of the overtime. If you score a touchdown, it puts pressure on the other team to match you, or maybe to match and then go for two and win the game outright. The other advantage of going first is that you get the ball third if the opposing team ties you, with a chance to win the game outright. There's no fourth possession if the team score on the first three.
That was what Shanahan said after the game. We wanted to get the ball third, which sounds like an incredibly stupid thing to say. But actually, like the analytics people are like, actually, it kind of makes sense. You do want to get the ball third.
You do want to get the ball third, yeah.
And also, for people that were watching the game, like, you saw after the 49ers settled for a field goal, didn't you all sort of feel like a pall was cast over that bench there? Like, oh, shit, here it goes. Mahomes is about to get the ball. So it's totally understandable why he would want the ball third if it came down to that, right?
Right, and to maybe just not give Mahomes the ball immediately. And the other factor that I think was down the list in the conversation was that San Francisco's defense was gassed.
Yep.
They looked really, really tired. They had been on the field for a long time. You send them out there facing Pat Mahomes to start overtime, and the pressure level goes up. So I think you do want your defense in that situation to be as rested as possible, given the circumstances, when you know at some point they're going to have to go on the field and defend against the Chiefs offense.
I mean, my gut reaction was that it was stupid, that it was really stupid. And that, Joel, I was like, oh, these people like have never seen college overtime before. Because in college, you always want to get the ball second, but it's a slightly different system. And I didn't appreciate that at the time. That the college system, you do have the chance to match, but if you match, then both teams get the ball again. There's a difference here. If you match here, then the team that, has the ball first, it does convert into sudden death. So I was being a little bit quick to criticize and a little ignorant about the system. That being said, your point is exactly right, Joel. If you are the 49ers and you are playing against Patrick Mahomes, if you don't score a touchdown on the first possession, you have to feel like you're going to lose. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but like you're giving Mahomes, it's not just that he's Mahomes, you're giving him 4 downs. Like once you score the field goal, like as an offense, if you know you have only 3 downs, then you have to punt. The game is like so much, it's not necessarily easier is the right word, but it's like way easier to get a first down if you have 4 downs to do it every time. And so you're really under the gun if you have a quote unquote successful drive and get a field goal, like you're probably going to lose. And so that's why I thought it was stupid. I don't know, again, how the numbers kind of bear it out.
Or
Or
maybe it's stupid no matter what, because Pat Mahomes is on the other side. Because if you give him the ball first and he goes down and scores, which we're assuming would have happened regardless, then you are again under pressure to march down and score against Kansas City's great defense, which performed really, really well.
But the counter argument to the counter argument is, okay, the Chiefs go down and score a touchdown, then you're giving Brock Purdy, who needs a little bit more of an advantage, the advantage of having 4 downs to get a first down every time down the field. And then the fact that the 49ers didn't score a touchdown on the first drive, I mean, this was a great game. I agree with everything you said at the top, Joel, but we were deprived of what would have been the greatest play in the history of professional football, which is the Chiefs score and they go for a 2-point conversion, which they've said that they would have done to either win or lose the Super Bowl.
When I read that, Josh, I was stunned. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, though, is that, like, I mean, we're all talking about people being tired. I mean, the Chiefs defense was clearly gassed, like, at the end, too. So, I mean, you got to think that, Andy Reid is looking at that. He's like, man, Christian McCaffrey's picking up a little steam now. They're wearing us down. Like, we probably ought to get this out of here. We have Pat Mahomes in 2 yards. You know what I mean? Like, we can't, 3 yards. Like, we can't do something with that. Like, so that absolutely makes a lot of sense if they were going to end that way. Also, I kind of want to backtrack for a second because, one thing that Shanahan did that did kind of annoy me? At the end of the first half, they get the ball back with 20 seconds to go. And they ran the clock out.
And they also didn't use their timeouts when Kansas City had the ball earlier. They could have maybe had like a minute.
Yeah, man. I mean, they had an opportunity to kind of put some more points on the board. And I just kept thinking all night, and maybe you all felt the same way. Man, 49ers should be leading by a lot more right now.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Michael Jordan never lost in the finals. Patrick Mahomes lost in the Super Bowl. They got blown out by the Bucks and Tom Brady. And I think, look, small number of games, a lot of like kind of chaos and randomness. It's hard to draw any conclusions. But if you are a player on the 49ers, you may be going to the game with like, the Chiefs have lost. Mahomes has lost in the Super Bowl. And I think the way to beat him and them, which the 49ers could have done in this game, they were dominant, is get a fucking enormous lead. Don't get a 10-point lead, get a 20-point lead. And they really...
Like a 28-3 lead, say.
I mean, that's touche. All right, in the bonus segment, we're going to talk about the CBS broadcast, about Tony Romo and our thoughts therein. But before we end here, I wanted to do a couple of lightning round things. And then you guys, if you have any last thoughts as well. All right, this is maybe a sad and unfair thing to even ask, but would you rather be Dre Greenlaw and tear your Achilles running onto the field during the fucking Super Bowl, or would you rather be Darrell Luter and have the ball hit off your foot on a punt and lead to the Chiefs scoring a crucial touchdown?
I think I'd rather be Luter because I'm not looking at like 9 months of rehab and a torn Achilles tendon.
Yeah, I mean,
players get over fluke mistakes in games much quicker than fans do.
People will forget that. Maybe a lot of 49ers fans won't.
You think that in 40 years, this guy's not going to wake up in the middle of the night being like, why did the ball hit my foot?
He will have another chance to make up for it. You know, the thing about everybody's gotten kind of used to the idea that you can recover from an injury like an Achilles or something. There's no guarantee, man. And also, like, I mean, this is like the worst time to have a season-ending injury. Like the very end of the year, it's going to carry into next year. He may not be right next year. He may not play next year. So I'm probably going to be Luter, I think, if I could. But still,
and also to have it happen that way. I mean, just random foot planting, non-contact, weird turf in your cleat.
Horrible.
Awful.
All right. Final thoughts from you guys?
I mean, look, man, I'm really curious if any of our listeners were in Vegas, because I feel like we've kind of missed the very Vegasness of all this. Like, I mean, there was a time in our lives when Vegas was verboten. Like, nobody talked about it. You couldn't talk about gambling, and nobody wanted to do shit there. And then they had the NBA All-Star game there in 2007, and everybody was like, we're never doing that again. And then all of a sudden, like, there's teams there. They have the America's biggest sporting event there. And it just seemed like a lot of fun from a distance. I was telling my friends a couple times over the weekend, I was like, man, I kind of wish I could have gone to something like that. It looked kind of fun. So, if any of our listeners were there, any of you people to check out, I would be kind of curious to know like what you thought of the weekend, because it looked kind of cool. And, it just, because the game was so good, because there was all these other subplots, Taylor Swift and all that sort of stuff, like, I feel like that kind of got lost, but we just had a Super Bowl in Vegas, which is weird if you've lived in America long enough to remember when, you know, people didn't really do this kind of stuff there.
Have you been to Vegas? And have you been to a Super Bowl? It seemed like just the last place on earth I would have wanted to be this week, to be honest.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. But I mean, my final comment would be that the NFL, no matter what it does, always fucking wins. I mean, they get another amazing game. They're going to have the biggest audience maybe of all time that watched it. They have colonized the gambling industry and a market that the league forwent for decades. And they get an amazing game coming out of it. Until proven otherwise, the NFL remains Teflon.
Up next, CNBC's Alex Sherman on the mega streaming service that may change how you watch sports. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Hey, listeners, whether you love true crime or comedies, celebrity interviews, news, or even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? And guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance, too. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance. Then they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. Now that's something you'll want to press play on. It's easy to start a quote, and you'll be able to choose the best option for you fast. It's just one of the many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at Progressive.com to try the Name the Price tool for yourself and join the more than 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverage you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies, all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at Progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
It is a confusing time to be a sports fan. USC will be playing Rutgers a lot next year. Call it rivalry week. The Big Ten and SEC just teamed up to, I think, take over college football once and for all. And last week, three media heavyweights, Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery, announced the creation of a joint streaming service that bundles 14 channels from ESPN to first-round NCAA men's basketball tournament stalwart truTV. To help us understand what the hell this means for the future of watching sports, we're joined now by Alex Sherman, who covers media for CNBC. Hey, Alex, welcome back to the show.
Happy to be here.
Let's start with the basics. What have these companies agreed to do?
So this is, in essence, a skinny bundle of linear cable networks. And they are the cable networks and broadcast networks owned by Disney, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Fox. So that's ABC and Fox. Those are your two broadcast networks. And they come with the associated sports programming, but also all the other programming that you see on those broadcast networks. And then the cable networks that have some sports owned by all three of those companies. So Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2 and TNT and TBS and truTV, as you mentioned. And then, of course, the most important one is ESPN. And ESPN's inclusion in this bundle is sort of the reason that this is significant, because it's the first time that consumers will be able to pay a somewhat substantially discounted price and get access to ESPN, which has sort of been the last holdout. Every other company has gone streaming. ESPN's flagship has not. And so therefore, you've still had to pay for your $80, whatever it may be, cable bundle to get ESPN. Now they haven't priced this yet, but from what I'm told, it's expected to be about $40 to $50 a month. And you'll be able to at least watch all of the live games that are on ESPN.
So, Alex, I guess that was kind of the confusion, because I'm a person that I have regular cable because I don't want to think about all of this sort of stuff. So will I be able to watch all the sports that I want to watch if I get this skinny bundle or not?
You will not, because it does not include NBC and CBS. And there's a reason for that, which we can go into. But I would say you'll probably be able to watch, 75% of the sports that are out there, because ESPN owns the majority of live sports rights on a comparative basis to their other legacy media partners. You also, by the way, won't be able to watch anything that's on Amazon or Apple or, there's a little bit of other sports and some other streamers if you count, WWE. That's now going to be on Netflix. So none of that comes with the bundle either. So this really is, in essence, a way to watch ESPN and not have to pay your full allotted cable bundle. And by the way, to make this more confusing, there is going to be an ESPN direct-to-consumer streaming service that's also going to launch, which is not the same thing as this. That will launch in the fall of 2025, Disney announced. This new streaming venture, the skinny bundle of cable, will launch in the fall of 2024, this year.
So when I first saw the headlines for this, it was being heralded as like a really big story, like a big business story, obviously, with all of these like enormous companies agreeing to do something. that's like an important story on your beat, Alex. But I think the more I've read about it and thought about it, kind of the less important it actually seems. It's clearly an interim step. It's not a final thing. As Joel was asking and you answered, it's not really a solution to most people. It doesn't seem like to me. And if you're thinking, oh, I can get ESPN without paying for other stuff, ESPN is basically telling you, don't buy this in a kind of implying, because we're going to have our own thing. And so why are you wasting our time by coming on here to talk to us about this thing that isn't? No, we asked you to come on. Thank you for coming on. But like, am I right in thinking the story just keeps shrinking like every day?
So I'll defend my appearance here to some degree. From a consumer standpoint, you are absolutely right, Josh. This is not really that big of a deal. There's only going to be so many people, I think, that do not subscribe to cable today that want this thing. Because if you don't subscribe to cable today, you're already living without ESPN. So now you're in this bucket of people that's like, oh man, like I really wish I had ESPN, but I don't want to buy YouTube TV or my cable product and pay $75 a month for it. But man, like if I could only pay $45 for it, I'd sure love to have it. But I also am in a bucket of people there that will take this thing and then not subscribe to the full ESPN direct-to-consumer service, which is out a year later, which comes with all sorts of bells and whistles and personalization and integration with fantasy sports and sports betting. And we don't even know what else is going to be on there, but it will have a lot of ESPN shoulder programming and documentaries and stuff that probably don't come with this service. So
I also don't want to watch this Big Ten on CBS. I don't want to watch, Premier League on NBC. Like,
right.
You're threading the needle there.
Unless you are okay with canceling cable, buying this service, and then also buying Peacock and Paramount Plus, so you're supplementing it. And you'd probably shave, I don't know, $10 or $15 maybe off your cable bill by doing that. But it becomes more confusing. You now have 3 interfaces instead of 1. So yes, consumer standpoint, don't think that this is an earth-shattering product at all. And by the way, if you speak to Disney executives, they kind of say the same thing. Like, no, this is just like a niche product. Like, we want as many people to get access to ESPN as possible. So if this is 1 million people or whatever it may be, like, better than nothing. That's their general takeaway. The reason, however, that this is a bigger story from a business standpoint is that it may lead to shrinking cable bundles overall. So it is possible that the pay TV distributors, the Comcast, the Charters, the DirecTVs, will look at this product and say, I want that. Like, if you companies are going to sell this, give me that deal. Why am I paying you all this money for the HGTV and all these Discovery networks that aren't really moving the needle for us, hypothetically, but we still have to pay you for because you've always bundled all of your channels together, Warner Brothers Discovery. So that may lead to a shrinking cable bundle and the dissolution of various different cable networks that still exist in sort of zombie form on your cable dial, which will lead to, theoretically a lot of lost jobs and maybe a little bit less money that you're paying for cable.
And on the flip side, it's a way for these companies with very little risk, it seems to me, to begin to test and figure out what our streaming future looks like, right?
Yes, I think that what's interesting about this to me is that the sports media community has been waiting for years for ESPN's direct-to-consumer flagship. If anyone listens to these sort of sports media podcasts, this has been like a topic of debate and question at least for 3 years. When is this thing going to finally come out? When can I finally get ESPN and cancel my cable bundle? Well, this announcement sort of mutes that hot debate point because it kind of takes the pressure off ESPN. It's like, well, some people will sign up to this thing and other people will sign up to our direct-to-consumer thing. And so why are they doing this? Well, they're doing this because the cable model is a theoretically better business model than streaming. Why is that? It's really easy to cancel your streaming service, but it is a lot harder to cancel cable. You kind of have it and then you just keep paying for it. But if you're out of season on sports, if you're a football fan and you're paying for Monday Night Football ESPN, and then it's not football season anymore, you just click a button and then you're not paying for ESPN anymore. So the churn rate is so much higher that it makes the cable model a better business, at least again, in theory.
So for people that are sports fans, right, is that you kind of come into sports by watching your team locally, and then like you get into the other parts of the sports, right? Because I mean, there's this theory that like, oh, we want to see the SEC on ESPN, or I want to see the national NBA game of the week. But the way I came to sports was like I was watching the Houston Rockets on Channel 20 or what, I don't know the channel, but this doesn't appear to do anything for people that just want to see their local home teams, though, right?
Sure doesn't. The regional sports networks are not a part of this. And the regional sports business model is also sort of on the margins breaking down. One of the largest holders of regional sports rights, which is a company called Diamond Sports, an entity majority owned by Sinclair, declared bankruptcy. So they've lost some sports on the margins. Amazon recently put in an investment that may make that company live on for some amount of time. But to your point, regional sports are not a part of this sports JV. So if you want to watch your local sports, again, you either need to keep subscribing for cable, at least for the time being. This JV was just announced, so it could grow, or you need to subscribe to a streaming service. But just quickly, I think if you are thinking about this as like, well, maybe they'll add on regional sports. All that's going to do is increase the cost of this, and it's going to get to some point again where it starts to look more and more like the cost of cable, because regional sports networks are really expensive because the rights to broadcast the games are really expensive.
Maybe you guys can correct me if it seems like I'm just feeling some recency bias here, but it seems like both in our sports and in the way we watch sports, we're just all so conscious of the fact that we're in this purgatory right now. Like whether it's the soccer super league or the SEC and Big Ten, like you were saying, Stefan, probably going to break away at some point. And in the way that these games are broadcast and how we watch them, like it's just so obvious that this streaming service isn't an ultimate solution, that it's just a trial balloon that's getting floated. And so I think the question that we're all wondering is whether it's in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, when stuff all shakes out with, you know, the NBA is looking for its next TV deal. Like, it just seems like we're not living in the world currently that we're going to be living in. And there's a kind of frustration in that, like, we just want to get to the fireworks factory, as it were. So, Alex, I don't know if you want to put both your kind of fan hat on and your analyst hat on. Like, what do you want it to look like? Like, what do you think would be the best for fans and consumers? And what do you think is going to happen?
Yep. So I'll give you two better ways than exist today from a simplicity standpoint. One is that we're headed toward a future where everything is streaming. So in the end, the owners of these rights are the big pocketed tech companies because they want to get into this game. Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, and then, you know, maybe Disney, ESPN sticks around. And I don't know, maybe one other traditional media company hangs around because NBC, Universal, and Paramount Global have merged or whatever it may be. So it's at least a little simpler. There's all these streaming services, maybe 5 or 6 of them, and then there's one aggregator of all of the streaming services. So you have something that kind of looks more like cable, but it's an aggregation of 5 or 6 streaming services. You pay one price, you go to one user interface, and it's all there. Or the other possibility is that sports stay on cable, live sports stay in this traditional pay TV ecosystem, and then everything else that's on demand is in streaming. So you still got to pay for 2, but at least it's simple. Sports, cable. Not sports, not cable. We're not in that world today for reasons that I don't know if I have time to get into, but it basically stems from the fact that legacy media companies thought streaming was the future. Then in 2022, all the growth went out of Netflix and all the legacy media companies pivoted their strategies to emphasize profitability over streaming growth. Streaming still is a money-losing business for these legacy media companies, but the ship was already out of the dock at that point, and the sports had been put on these streaming services. So if you're going to take them away, that's terrible publicity and very for all the people that are already paying for these things. So we're kind of in a mess now that we can't get out of. And that's why we're living in this purgatory.
And yet the leagues themselves, Alex, have to perform this same dance. We don't know what the NBA is going to do. The NFL is negotiating to put more games that are exclusively streamed. They did that this year, and it seemed to work okay. They've been doing it for a couple seasons now. There's going to be a game in Brazil next year that could be just streamed only. The leagues play an important role here. And we really haven't talked about what that role is in shaping the future of how their products are consumed going forward. The leagues, but also all of the ancillary sports associations, whether it's tennis or golf or the Olympics or the World Cup, all of these ancillary separate organizations that create sports products.
Yeah, it's a super important point. The leagues themselves are actually sort of incentivized to keep us in this purgatory because they want as many bidders as possible for all of this stuff. So Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, just said last week, the Super Bowl will not stream exclusively on streaming for as long as he is the commissioner. Why? Because the reach is still the broadest if you're doing something on broadcast TV, because you can get it over the air for free. There's a lot of rural areas of this country that still don't have high-speed broadband. They can get the game. And then if you want to stream it on a non-exclusive basis, that's also available. So if you keep the legacy media guys in the game and you incentivize them because cable is a better business model, but then you have all these deep-pocketed tech companies that have balance sheets that are 10 to 15 times bigger than all the legacy media companies who can just throw $1 billion at whatever right they want to. That is the best situation for the league to maximize the amount of money coming in, and you just carve up the rights for all of these sports. 3 packages, 4 packages, 5 packages, whatever it may be. And so it makes the consumer in a very confusing bind, but it does maximize revenue for the leagues.
Alex Sherman covers media for CNBC and CNBC.com. Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back when you use it to buy the new Apple Vision Pro or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.50% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Apple Card and Savings by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
Now it is time for Afterball, sponsored by Bennett's Prune Juice, endorsed by Kenny Sailors, who says it was okay. Did you guys like the Bennett's Prune Juice ad during the Super Bowl?
Wait, was there one? Did?
Maybe it was a local ad here in D.C. Joel, you didn't see it.
No, I saw that, Josh. I thought that Kenny Sailors, excellent pitch man. I can see why Bennett's Prune Juice has signed him up. He's got charisma. Tony Romo, watch out.
I liked the part of the ad where he said it was okay. That was my favorite. But Joel, we're going to take this opportunity to get the Joel Anderson review of the Super Bowl halftime show. It's what people have been waiting for.
Yeah, well, I try not to make things about me if I can do it, but sometimes it's really hard because, Usher and I are the same age, and I feel like I've kind of grown up with him, so it was really exciting to see him on stage.
Did Usher ever have as good a chance with Beyonce as you did?
Well, I know they've done some songs together, and he was in her, I can't remember. He's in one of those videos.
You have a lot of things in common, except that you had more of a chance with Beyonce. So I'm just trying.
We've both been in the air. She seemed to have an interest in both of us. There's enough. She's had previous partners, so I'm sure that maybe. She could like me and Usher, you know what I'm saying? But I think the thing is that it was just really, really cool to see him on stage last night. And I just remember when he came out with Can You Get With It? And I know that people that have not Usher fans don't remember Can You Get With It when he first came out with Puff Daddy and Devontae Swing. And then he did the Think of You song that was his second single. And I was like, man, this kid is really good. I remember being intensely jealous of Usher as a teenager. I was like, man, that dude's so cool. He probably gets all the girls. And it's probably true. But as I got older, I learned, I was like, well, you know what? I can just take pleasure in seeing this guy on stage in America's biggest spectacle. And I thought he did a really good job.
That's big of you. What I'm hearing, Stefan, is that Joel did the Super Bowl halftime show, in a way. In a sense.
With Beyonce.
I feel like he did it for all of us. He did it for all of us. And I mean, the thing is, so we were talking about it with our producer, Kevin, before here, and he was not quite as impressed with the stagecraft and something like that. And I mean, look,
wow, Kevin.
I don't know about that. But the thing is, how can you, here's the one thing that we've seen a lot of Super Bowl halftime acts that have done really, really well. You know, Prince, Michael Jackson, Rihanna, whatever. Have you ever seen anybody roller skate? Like have a costume change and roller skate in the middle of a performance? I mean, what a tremendous risk he took there. Mm-hmm. I was very worried for him.
Unless he's a lifelong roller skater.
And he is. Roller skating is a big part of Atlanta culture, which is, you know, where he makes his home base. And so, I mean, it's, look, a big deal for him, but also like anything could go wrong in that circumstance. You're on stage with all these other people. I think there was this very end, like maybe he had a quick stumble, but the fact that he pulled that off and was willing to do it for everybody, I thought it was really, really good. And so, look, he brought out her, he brought out Alicia Keys, which, you know, I was a little less excited about.
Who's more famous, Usher or Alicia Keys?
Oh, Usher, right? Gotta be, right? Okay. Stefan is shaking his head.
I don't think so. I'm thinking
you
crossover.
think Alicia Keys is... Really?
Yeah.
You weren't a big OMG fan? You weren't in the club then, Stefan, when OMG came out?
I felt pretty white watching the halftime show.
I think this might be a Two Americas issue around Usher's fame.
Could be.
I think.
Yeah. I think that's right. So I would say I named those couple early songs, and that's why I was like, oh man. Well, maybe me and what Kevin and I will do after this is we'll send you a little, you know, Usher mixtape or something, a little playlist, and you can just kind of get caught up in retrospect.
So
good
Kenny
job,
Sailors
Usher.
would want me to ask you what our Afterball name is for this week, Joel.
Well, you know, I was kind of struggling with this for a little bit. And so I'm just going to go ahead and make it his ex-girlfriend, who herself was a star of the girl group TLC Chili. You know, the Confessions album has her imprint all over it, right? And so I think it's fair to make it Chili.
Isn't she with Matthew Lawrence now?
She is. And she sent out a tweet. I think Matthew Lawrence's birthday was yesterday. So anyway, but I mean, I still think of them as like kind of bound together because that was when Usher was at his most popular. So I think Chili has to be the Afterball name today.
All right, Stefan, what is your Chili?
I'm going to date myself now and tell you that the first Super Bowl that I distinctly remember took place on January 11th in 1970. That was Super Bowl IV, the second one to officially carry the name. It was played at Tulane Stadium in New Orleans. The participating teams were the Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings. And speaking of halftime shows, that one was titled A Tribute to Mardi Gras, and it featured jazz musicians Doc Severinsen, Al Hirt, and Lionel Hampton, an opera singer named Marguerite Piazza, comedian and singer Carol Channing, and the Southern University Marching Band reenacting the 1815 Battle of New Orleans. Of course. Just like this past season, Kansas City had won 2 road playoff games to reach the Super Bowl, where NFL Films mic'd up a head coach for the first time, and Hank Stram of the Chiefs, clutching a rolled-up program, did not disappoint. Minnesota had the best record in the NFL under its stoic coach, Bud Grant. The Vikings were already my second favorite team after the Giants because of their purple uniforms and the sweeping Viking horns helmet logo. The team name and imagery was adopted to honor Minnesota's Scandinavian roots, and also because my favorite player, Giants quarterback Fran Tarkenton, had played for the Vikings previously. The Chiefs won the game, which bummed out 6-year-old me. How could the Purple People Eaters and quarterback Joe Kapp, whom SI would put on the cover next summer under the headline, The Toughest Chicano, lose to an AFL team? It was the second straight year that had happened after the Jets' famous upset victory of the Colts. What 6-year-old me didn't realize was that a big reason for the Chiefs' success was that it actively scouted and signed black players, particularly players from HBCUs. I was reminded of this history during Sunday's game in a Twitter thread by the writer Michael Harriot. Harriot traced the importance of black players to the NFL's founding in 1920 and before, and he explained the unofficial quota system that restricted the number of black players in the league through the 1950s. When the AFL was started in 1960 by a group including Lamar Hunt, who owned the Dallas Texans, who would move to Kansas City a couple of years later, it was at an obvious competitive disadvantage to the monolithic NFL. The inefficiency that the AFL quickly exploited was the NFL's baked-in racism, the unofficial quotas limiting the number of black players on a team. Kansas City was, like the NFL, unofficially segregated, and as Mark Dent and Rustin Dodd write in their new book about the Chiefs and the city, Kingdom Quarterback, Lamar Hunt was never confused for a progressive, but he was a strident capitalist, they write, who wanted to beat the hidebound NFL. One of Hunt's first hires was a Houston guy that I'm sure you're familiar with, Joel, the first full-time black scout in pro football history, Lloyd Wells. Wells' nickname was Judge because he was such a gifted talent evaluator. Since the Southern College conferences were all white in the early 60s, Wells funneled local athletes to HBCUs. In 1963, the Chiefs had the first pick in the AFL draft, and Wells persuaded Hunt to take Grambling defensive end Buck Buchanan. He was the first black player drafted number 1 in either league. In 1964, Wells managed to sneak out and later sign Prairie View A&M wide receiver Otis Taylor from the hotel where the Dallas Cowboys had stashed him before the AFL draft. Kansas City drafted and signed more great black players, linebackers Bobby Bell of Minnesota and Willie Lanier of Morgan State, running back Mike Garrett of USC, Curtis McClinton of Kansas, cornerback Emmett Thomas of Bishop College in Dallas, and a bunch more pivotal, if less remembered players from Grambling, Tennessee State, and Southern University. As Denton Dodd writes, the black players had a big impact off the field, too. McClinton, who scored in Kansas City's 35-10 loss to Green Bay in the first AFL-NFL title game in 1967, worked for a black-owned bank in Kansas City and formed a company to develop integrated housing and pressured the city for a fair housing law, which passed that same year. The Vikings were big favorites in Super Bowl IV, but the Chiefs jumped out to a 9-0 lead and padded it with a back-of-the-playbook play that Hank Stram sent into the huddle, 65 toss power trap, with wide receiver Gloucester Richardson, another Wells product who went to Jackson State. Garrett scored on the play, Lanier and Thomas intercepted passes, Otis Taylor caught a clinching touchdown, and the Chiefs won 23-7. In the locker room afterward, during a live interview with CBS, Garrett pulled Wells into the shot to give him credit. You still had redlining and all that, Garrett told Denton Dodd in Kingdom Quarterback, but you could for a period of time forget. That Chiefs team was the first in pro football to start more African-American players than white players in a championship game, 12 out of 22. 54 years later, the franchise won its 4th Super Bowl on a touchdown pass from a black quarterback to a black wide receiver.
Wow, man. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of older black men in my life who were Kansas City Chiefs fans. The Chiefs and the Cowboys were like two teams that the older black men in my life were always rooting for and talking about at once upon a time. And it was definitely because of the stuff you outlined there, right? They gave them opportunities when a lot of teams, unlike the former Washington NFL team, for instance, didn't. So yeah, man, they earned the loyalty of a generation of black folks in some ways. And I guess it's kind of, washed over me because for whatever reason, I've always just kind of been a Chiefs, Steelers, those are the teams that I just kind of always followed a little bit. So yeah, man, that's great. I love that.
And I think of baseball, the Boston Red Sox have this long drought between winning World Series championships. One of the most famous streaks or curses in sports. And lo and behold, they were, very, very, very slow to sign black players. What a coincidence that they didn't win. And the Dodgers, who are the team that you can say progressive, but they took advantage of other teams' racism as an arbitrage opportunity that there are all these great players that nobody else wants. We'll get them and just win the World Series.
And the Chiefs doing it, Joel, I think is interesting because Kansas City was not some northern city, right? It's southern in a lot of ways. And for Lamar Hunt, who again was not some progressive trailblazer. He wasn't Branch Rickey here, but the recognition that the only way we're going to compete with the NFL is if we get the best players, and we have an opportunity to do that. And they went out and did that. If only they could now, get rid of their logo and their imagery and their name and that chant.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to know. It's kind of weird how it's kind of I don't know if it's faded from the headlines, but I feel like that's just not a topic of discussion. It's like when Washington, changed, it's like, all right, we figured that out. And that let the Atlanta Braves off the hook, for instance, or whatever, right? Then you'll see the videos of people doing the tomahawk chop, Chiefs fans. Yeah, man.
In Germany.
So that's still kind of ugly in Germany.
That is our show for today. Our producer is Kevin Bendis. To listen to past shows and subscribe or just reach out, go to slate.com/hangup. And you can email us at hangup@slate.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. For Joel Anderson and Stefan Fatsis, I'm Josh Levin. Remember Zalmo Beatty, and thanks for listening.